Is there a fate worse than death? Is there a scenario where a criminal would gladly choose capital punishment over life imprisonment? The answer is chillingly complex. As surreal as it sounds, there exist prisons in this world that make the death penalty seem like a merciful sentence. Prisons are riddled with unspeakable horrors that would make your stomach turn. Places where hope is extinguished and replaced by despair, where brutality becomes routine, and where the line between justice and inhumanity becomes terrifyingly blurred. These are not just buildings, but monuments to suffering and fear. In this video, I'm going to unveil the hidden realities that lie behind their walls, revealing a world you may have never imagined. Join me as we delve into the shadows of the penal system and uncover the truth that may forever change how you view justice and mercy. Number 1. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, infamously known as the Rock, is a chilling testament to isolation and despair. Nestled on an island in the San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz's isolation from the mainland made escape nearly impossible, leaving its prisoners to face an existence devoid of hope. The prison, which operated from 1934 to 1963, housed some of America's most notorious criminals. Its reputation as a maximum security facility was well earned, with layers of strict security measures ensuring no prisoner could escape. But it was the psychological isolation and brutal living conditions that made Alcatraz genuinely terrifying. Within the cold, damp cells of Alcatraz, inmates were met with an unrelenting routine designed to break their will. Strict silence rules were enforced, with prisoners rarely permitted to speak to one another. This intense isolation led to a crushing sense of loneliness that wore down even the toughest individuals. The guards at Alcatraz were known for their harsh and often cruel treatment. Infractions, even minor ones, were met with severe punishments, often leading to solitary confinement in the dreaded hole. Here, prisoners would spend days or even weeks in total darkness, fed minimal sustenance, and entirely cut off from human contact. Alcatraz's reputation was further solidified by the many failed escape attempts. Of the 14 escape attempts, none succeeded, and the fates of those who tried were often grim. The waters surrounding the island were frigid and filled with treacherous currents. The inescapable reality of Alcatraz was a constant reminder to its inmates that they were trapped, with freedom a cruel mirage always just out of reach. The chilling folklore surrounding Alcatraz includes tales of hauntings and spectral occurrences. Some visitors and former guards claim to have heard unexplained cries and footsteps, remnants perhaps of the untold suffering that took place within those walls. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary stands as a symbol of an unforgiving penal system that went beyond mere punishment into the realm of psychological torment. Its legacy as a place of fear and desperation lingers, making it a grim monument to a time when justice was often eclipsed by terror and isolation. The mere name Alcatraz continues to evoke a sense of dread, a dark testament to what humanity can inflict upon itself in the name of law and order. Number 2. Bang Kwang Central Prison in Thailand, colloquially known as the Bangkok Hilton, is infamous for its harsh conditions and severe punishments, making it one of the most terrifying places for incarceration in the world. Located just north of Bangkok, this maximum security prison houses inmates, including many foreign prisoners, who are often sentenced to life or face the death penalty. What sets Bang Kwang apart is the relentless and often brutal regime that the inmates must endure. One of the most horrifying aspects of Bang Kwang is the initial introduction for new prisoners. Inmates are shackled with leg irons for the first 3 months of their sentence, a dehumanizing experience that serves as a constant reminder of their confinement. In some instances, these leg irons are never removed, becoming a permanent fixture. The living conditions within Bang Kwang are nothing short of nightmarish. Cells are severely overcrowded, often cramming more than a dozen inmates into spaces meant for far fewer. The lack of basic sanitation, coupled with inadequate medical care, leads to the spread of diseases. Food is scant and nutritionally poor, leading many prisoners to rely on family or outside support for sustenance. The mental and emotional toll of life in Bang Kwang is equally severe. Isolation and a lack of meaningful human interaction contribute to a pervasive sense of despair. Many inmates suffer from mental health issues, and the prison's approach to treatment is often lacking or entirely absent. Bang Kwang is also one of the few prisons in Thailand where executions are carried out. The looming shadow of the death penalty is a constant reminder for those facing capital punishment, adding to the general atmosphere of fear and hopelessness. The guards at Bang Kwang are known for their strict and often ruthless enforcement of rules. Punishments can be severe and arbitrary, contributing to an environment where inmates live in constant fear of reprisal. Visiting Bang Kwang is a harrowing experience even for family members, who must navigate a complex and often hostile system to see their loved ones. The knowledge that their family member is enduring such conditions adds to the psychological burden of the prison's impact. The terrifying reputation of Bang Kwang Central Prison is well earned. The inhumane conditions, severe punishments, and a general lack of empathy and compassion create an environment that goes beyond mere incarceration into a realm of torment and fear. The mere mention of Bangkok Hilton strikes terror into the hearts of those who know its dark and oppressive reality. Number 3. La Sabaneta Prison in Venezuela, officially known as the National Center for Social Reintegration of Maracaibo, has been infamous for its extremely violent and horrifying conditions, making it one of the most feared prisons globally. First and foremost, the prison's overcrowding has reached staggering levels. Built to accommodate around 700 inmates, La Sabaneta has been known to house up to 3,700 prisoners at one time. The overcrowding forces inmates into extremely confined and unsanitary spaces, contributing to the rapid spread of diseases and constant tension among prisoners. Violence within La Sabaneta is a daily occurrence, and it's not uncommon for disputes to escalate into full-blown riots. The limited number of guards is woefully insufficient to maintain order, and they often turn a blind eye to the prisoners' activities. This has given rise to inmate-governed systems, where the strongest and most ruthless prisoners exert control over the others. The result is a terrifying hierarchy that enforces its rules through intimidation, violence, and even murder. Healthcare and sanitation in La Sabaneta are virtually non-existent. Diseases run rampant, and medical care is inadequate at best. Malnutrition is common, as food is scarce and often contaminated. Access to clean water is a constant struggle, compounding the already dire living conditions. The lack of oversight and control has allowed for an entrenched system of corruption within the prison. Guards and officials are often involved in illicit activities, and bribery is a common practice. This corruption perpetuates the lawless environment and contributes to the ongoing suffering of the inmates. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of La Sabaneta is the sheer number of deaths that have occurred within its walls. Riots and violence have led to hundreds of fatalities over the years. In one particularly gruesome incident in 1994, a riot led to the deaths of over 100 inmates. The event served as a stark reminder of the prison's brutal and unforgiving nature. The mere name La Sabaneta has become synonymous with terror and despair. The deplorable living conditions, rampant violence, corruption, and a complete disregard for human dignity make it a living nightmare for those unfortunate enough to be incarcerated there. The horrifying stories that emerge from within its walls serve as a haunting testament to the prison's place among the most terrifying in the world. 4. Tadmor military prison in Syria is widely recognized as one of the most terrifying and inhumane prisons ever to exist. Its reputation for brutality, torture, and degrading treatment of inmates has made it a symbol of oppression and fear. Located in the desert near the ancient city of Palmyra, Tadmor was primarily used to house political prisoners and those considered a threat to the Syrian government. The isolated location added to the sense of hopelessness and despair for those confined within its walls. The physical structure of Tadmor itself was daunting, with its thick concrete walls and cramped, poorly ventilated cells. The conditions inside were squalid, with minimal access to sanitation and medical care. Inmates were often packed into tiny cells, subjected to extreme temperatures, and left to languish in their own filth. However, it was the systematic and brutal treatment of prisoners that truly made Tadmor infamous. Torture was a routine part of life in the prison. Inmates were subjected to unimaginable physical and psychological abuse, including beatings, electrocution, and even mutilation. The guards were notorious for their sadistic methods, often torturing prisoners just for the sake of cruelty, with no regard for human rights or even basic decency. One of the darkest chapters in Tadmor's history occurred in 1980, following an assassination attempt on then-President Hafez al-Assad. In retaliation, an estimated 800 to 2,500 prisoners were massacred within the prison's walls in a single, horrifying day. This event has become emblematic of the prison's callous disregard for human life. The regime of secrecy and fear that enveloped Tadmor extended to the families of the inmates as well. Many families were left in the dark about the fate of their loved ones, creating an agonizing uncertainty that only added to the prison's terror. Tadmor was eventually closed in 2001, only to be reopened and then destroyed during the Syrian civil war. Its legacy, however, endures as a chilling reminder of the capacity for human cruelty. In the annals of prison history, Tadmor stands as a stark warning of what can happen when power is unchecked and human rights are discarded. The stories of pain and suffering that emanated from its dark corridors are not merely historical footnotes. They are a testament to the depths of terror that can be inflicted within the very institutions meant to uphold justice. Number 5. The ADX Florence Supermax facility in the United States, often referred to as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, represents the epitome of a prison you wouldn't want to find yourself in. Housing some of the most dangerous criminals in the country, the facility has a reputation for its harsh conditions and highly restrictive environment. The prison's design is centered around solitary confinement, with inmates spending 23 hours a day in a small, windowless cell. The 1 hour outside the cell is spent in a larger solitary recreation cage. Human interaction is almost non-existent, with meals slid through a small slot in the door, and inmates rarely seeing other prisoners or even guards. The psychological toll of this isolation is immense, and many have argued that it can amount to cruel and unusual punishment. Even the architecture of ADX Florence is designed to disorient and oppress. The cells are soundproofed to minimize noise, and the small, 4-inch wide windows prevent prisoners from viewing the outside world except for a small sliver of sky. Everything is controlled to minimize any semblance of normalcy, from the furniture, which is made of poured concrete, to the constant surveillance through cameras and remote-controlled doors. Inmates at ADX Florence include high-profile terrorists, spies, and gang leaders who are deemed too high risk for other federal prisons. The extreme security measures include motion detectors, pressure pads, and 12-foot-tall razor-wire fences, all contributing to the feeling of being trapped in an inescapable fortress. While some argue that stringent conditions are necessary for housing individuals who pose serious threats to national security, the lack of social interaction and sensory stimulation has led to reports of mental illness and despair among inmates. The harsh realities of life in ADX Florence have led to numerous legal challenges and debates over the ethics of such extreme isolation. ADX Florence serves as a stark reminder of the severe realities of the U.S. penal system. Though it might be considered necessary for those who have committed heinous crimes, the sheer isolation, relentless control, and abandonment of rehabilitation as a goal make it a place virtually anyone would dread ending up. Its existence raises profound questions about the nature of punishment, humanity, and the fundamental principles that should guide our approach to incarceration. Number 6. Karandiru Penitentiary in São Paulo, Brazil, was once notorious for its shocking living conditions and brutal violence, making it a place anyone would desperately want to avoid. The prison was designed to hold 3,000 inmates, but swelled to over 8,000 at its peak. Overcrowding was rampant, and prisoners were packed into cells like sardines. Sanitation was virtually non-existent, and diseases like HIV and tuberculosis spread quickly among the population. Violence within the prison was a daily occurrence, with gangs controlling different sections of the facility. The most horrifying incident was the 1992 massacre, when a riot led to the deaths of 111 inmates, mostly at the hands of police who stormed the building. Investigations later revealed that many of the killings were executions. The conditions were so appalling that they gained international attention, becoming a symbol of the failings of the Brazilian penal system. The prison was eventually closed in 2002, but its dark legacy lingers on. Karandiru Penitentiary serves as a chilling reminder of how a lack of oversight, humane treatment, and proper resources can turn a place of incarceration into a nightmarish hellhole, a place no one would ever wish to find themselves in. Number 7. Robben Island, located off the coast of Cape Town, South Africa, has a harrowing history that makes it a place you wouldn't wish even for an enemy. This infamous island served as a prison for political dissenters, including Nelson Mandela, who spent 18 of his 27 years in prison there. The isolation from the mainland was a psychological torment in itself, but the conditions inside the prison were even more deplorable. Inmates were subjected to grueling, hard labor, breaking rocks into gravel or working in lime quarries, often under the blinding sun. The racial discrimination within the prison was overt, with black prisoners receiving fewer rations and worse accommodations than their non-black counterparts. Torture, beatings, and other forms of humiliation were commonplace. The guards were known for their brutality and utter lack of empathy. Inmates were crammed into small, damp cells with inadequate clothing and bedding, subjected to freezing winters and sweltering summers. The island was not only a physical prison, but a crushing assault on the dignity and spirit of those confined there. Many prisoners were detained without trial, their voices silenced, and their freedoms stripped away. Robben Island stands as a symbol of oppression and the resilience of the human spirit. It is a place of reflection and remembrance, a stark reminder of a dark chapter in South Africa's history, and a place so filled with suffering that one wouldn't wish it upon anyone. Number 8. Black Dolphin Prison in Russia is renowned as one of the most terrifying prisons in the world, let alone in Russia. The name itself evokes fear, and its reputation is well-earned. Located near the border with Kazakhstan, this high-security prison houses some of Russia's most dangerous criminals, including murderers, terrorists, and serial killers. The conditions within are intentionally harsh and unrelenting. Inmates are kept in isolated cells for 22 hours a day, with minimal human contact. They are subjected to a routine that strips them of their individuality and breaks down their will. Upon arrival, prisoners are blindfolded to prevent them from mapping the layout of the facility, adding to the sense of disorientation and helplessness. One particularly chilling aspect of Black Dolphins is the way prisoners are transported within the facility. Inmates are forced to bend over at the waist, with guards holding their handcuffed hands to keep them off balance. This dehumanizing practice is a stark reminder of the complete loss of control that inmates face within these walls. With heavily armed guards, surveillance cameras monitoring every move, and guard dogs trained to attack at the slightest provocation, escape is considered impossible. The stark and unyielding environment, devoid of comfort or compassion, makes Black Dolphin a nightmarish place even by prison standards. Black Dolphin Prison is a symbol of unrelenting control and punishment. Its reputation as Russia's most terrifying prison is well-deserved, and the mere mention of its name can send shivers down anyone's spine. Number 9. Rikers Island in New York City has long been synonymous with violence, corruption, and inhumane treatment. This complex of 9 jails has a reputation that would deter anyone from wanting to end up there. Despite being a jail primarily for individuals awaiting trial or serving short sentences, the conditions within Rikers Island are notoriously harsh. Overcrowding has been a chronic problem, leading to tensions among inmates and an atmosphere rife with hostility. Violence is a significant issue, both among inmates and involving staff. Reports of beatings and abuse by correctional officers have plagued Rikers, and fights among inmates are commonplace. The facility has faced numerous lawsuits over the years due to the treatment of prisoners. Mental health support is severely lacking, and individuals with mental illnesses often end up in solitary confinement, a punishment that can exacerbate their conditions. Tragically, there have been cases of inmates dying by suicide within the confines of Rikers. Reform efforts have been slow, and while there are plans to close the facility by 2027, change has been incremental. The reputation of Rikers Island as a place of brutality and despair persists. For anyone familiar with the U.S. prison system, Rikers Island stands out as a stark example of the failures of mass incarceration. The name alone is a byword for a place where humanity and compassion are in short supply. It's a place that, without a doubt, no one would ever want to end up in. Number 10. Horon concentration camp, also known as Camp 22, in North Korea represents one of the most terrifying and hidden aspects of a regime shrouded in secrecy and fear. Its very existence is a testament to the extreme measures taken to suppress dissent and exercise control. Located near the border with China, the camp is one of several in North Korea that are used to imprison political dissidents, their families, and anyone considered disloyal to the regime. The conditions inside are said to be nothing short of nightmarish. Information about the camp is scant, as the North Korean government denies its existence, and few have managed to escape to tell their stories. However, defectors and human rights organizations have painted a grim picture of life inside the camp. Inmates, including children, are reportedly subject to forced labor, often toiling for 15 hours a day or more in mines or factories, with little to no medical care. Starvation is common, and food is so scarce that there are reports of prisoners resorting to eating rats and leaves. Torture and public executions are used as methods of control and punishment. Prisoners live in constant fear, knowing that the slightest infraction could lead to their death. Families are imprisoned together, but contact between family members is typically prohibited, leading to heartbreaking separations. The surveillance within the camp is intense, with informants everywhere, ensuring that there is no privacy or solace for those trapped within its walls. The psychological torment is constant, and trust is an unaffordable luxury. The world knows little about what goes on behind the barbed wires of Horon concentration camp, and the few stories that do emerge are so horrific that they are almost unbelievable. It stands as a symbol of ultimate terror, a place where humanity is stripped away and survival becomes a daily battle. The sheer horror of its existence makes it not just one of the scariest places in North Korea, but arguably the most terrifying place on Earth. These prisons stand as chilling reminders of the potential harshness of penal systems across different cultures and political regimes, places where humanity and decency can become scarce and survival becomes a daily battle. Which prison you think is the worst on the list?